If you play or compose music, you can ask the note where it wants to go. In other words, get out of your head and stop forcing it. This video is not just for musicians, it's for everybody, because this concept of asking the note applies to all different aspects of life. Recently, I saw a really good interview with a well-known musician by the name of Kurt Rosenwinkel, a guitar player. He was being interviewed by Rick Beato. I'll put a link to that interview below. And Kurt Rosenwinkel, I think initially, I haven't followed his career, but I've heard some of his playing, and I mean, he's just a spectacular player, great musician, wonderful improviser. And I think he started his career as a jazz player, or within that category. But he's just one of those guys that can't be locked into one genre, just in terms of the way that he plays and his compositions themselves. And he talked about, he's going to be releasing a book, I think he said, which is called Ask the Note Where It Wants to Go, or something along those lines. Yes, Ask the Note Where It Wants to Go, or Ask the Note, something like that. I'm going to have to double check on that. I'm not sure if the book is out right now. Anyway, I really like that idea and wanted to explore it in terms of just sort of trying to, what's the word? Just trying to describe it in a different way, because I think it can sort of seem a little bit mysterious and people might not really be able to relate to it. But I think it's very important, and there's a way that you can apply this idea of asking the note where it wants to go to your own life. So basically, within this musical context, I can speak to this on a personal level because I compose music myself and am basically doing it every day, about 10 to 15 minutes every night before I go to sleep. I have accumulated a small book of tunes, about a dozen, 4 of which I put online, and I can put a link down there in the description as well. So I think what Kurt Rosenwinkel is talking about is, at least my interpretation of this idea of asking the note where it wants to go, like when you're writing music or when you're playing, improvising. When you look at composition, where you're sitting down and working on something, it's sort of like a slowed down version of musical improvisation, like a jazz player would be involved in. So as you have this single note, you can randomly go to the keyboard or whatever instrument you have, and you can just randomly hit a note and sing that. You sing it out loud, sing it inside. And okay, so there it is, and okay, where do you want to go? Now, you actually don't go through that kind of a process. It's more about not kind of pushing ideas of where that sound wants to go. It's not pushing ideas onto the music. It's more about listening and responding to the sound, responding to what's present. And when I say pushing ideas onto the music, I'm thinking more of like a top-down kind of process where it's very artist-focused or author-focused, and that is in contrast to maybe like more bottom-up, which is kind of more listening and responding. In both of these examples, the process of going to the next note definitely involves the individual or the author or the artist. But when you approach it more, or you think about it more like, where does this sound want to go, or where does this note want to go, you shift the control to, or you shift from kind of more limited control to a kind of openness. And I think this is really important. And that openness encompasses less self-interference, right? And so the next note, the next sound can come more easily, more naturally, more organically. It can come with less resistance. And this speaks to a kind of a flow state, right? Where you sort of, you go by first feelings. And once you make a decision, you know, going by that first feeling, you have this new sort of context. And then you take that new context, and then you have another feeling or another first feeling. First decision, first feeling. I like thinking of it more of a feeling. So you're kind of stringing together these first feelings or these initial feelings. In this specific example of music composition, you can move from one note to the next, but for me at least, what often happens is it's more of getting a phrase. Sometimes the phrase will come to me, and that in and of itself is kind of a mysterious thing. It just comes to me, and then I sing it, and I kind of refine it a little bit to the point, just in terms of singing it. I might whistle it, but I usually hum it. And I get it to the point where I kind of like it, and I'll write it down, or I'll play it on the keyboard, and then I'll write that phrase down. It could be a 3-note phrase, 6 or 7-note phrase, or even longer, but they're usually around that, between 4 notes and 8 notes or something like that. And so that's an idea, like a little sentence or a phrase, and then I use that to and then I'll ask that phrase, or I'll say, where does this want to go? I usually don't say, okay, where do you want to go? I'll just say, where does this want to go? And then I go through that process of kind of just going by first feelings, writing things down, trying not to edit, just getting it out. But I think that this is an important aspect of it when we address this idea of asking the note. We're not saying, or this idea is not saying that the note is alive, that it makes decisions for itself, but it's simply a way, again, as I mentioned before, to kind of shift one's approach to creating music or whatever it is you're creating. It could be a life decision, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, it's just a way to shift your approach that kind of takes you away from your ego and reduces overthinking, kind of allows you to access your intuition better. It's a kind of openness, right? You're creating this openness. Now, how about other art forms? This definitely applies. If you're an author, you oftentimes hear authors saying, well, this is my character, and I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm going to ask the character what it wants to do or where it wants to go. What does the character want to do, right? That's oftentimes a way to kind of create that openness. How about if you're a visual artist, or you're a painter, a graphic designer? Where does this shape or this line want to go? Does it tell me, quote unquote, tell me to create another shape up here, or shall I take the line, is it saying extend me across the page this way? So this kind of thing, right? How about where does this moment want to go in terms of important life decisions and next steps? Next steps in terms of what you want to do with yourself, your job, where you want to live. Oftentimes this involves more research, more thinking, and it's important to go through that phrase. You weigh your options, and at a certain point, though, I think it's important to stop thinking about it. And maybe it could be a couple days or a couple weeks, a couple months, whatever it might be. You stop thinking about it. And when the time comes to make the decision, you have all of that stuff that has been brewing already for however long that you feel is necessary to brew. And then you just make a decision. So, this is part of it, asking the moment where it wants to go. You do the work, you do the research, weigh the options, and kind of put it in the back burner and let it brew before you make your kind of more intuitive decision, right? And all of that, well, that decision, that intuitive decision, will be informed by the work that you have done. So I just wanted to communicate a passing thought that I had when I saw this interview. It's worth watching this interview, whether you are a musician or not. I think he talks about this musician, Kurt Rosenwinkel, talks about some really nice ideas that are very applicable to everyone's lives. So please check it out if you'd like. Again, I'll put a link to some of my tunes if you're interested, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks very much.